فتى إلا لي لا سيف إلا ذو الفقار لا فتى إلا لي لا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today in tradition number 37 from 110 Lessons for Life from the Commander of the Faithful, Imam Ali, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, we want to look at a very short but yet powerful hadith on the consequences of having unattainable desires within the life of this transient world. Now, before we actually look at the tradition, we understand that the life of this world is such that many times we need to have desires, things that we are actually targeting and aiming for within our life. However, we also appreciate at the same time, in the words of this tradition, that to have goals, unattainable goals, is a religious injunction that we have been told to keep away from. So how do we actually reconcile the two? And what do the traditions mention are the two understandings? Before we go into that discussion, let us look at the words of the Commander of the Faithful. And he says the following: individuals who have the longest of unattainable desires in the transient world are the same people who have the worst of actions. We see within the traditions and within our own day-to-day life that many times we are forced to have long goals and desires. And in fact, there are traditions, there are statements from the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him and his family, in which he has told us, for example, that long desires, having goals, having aspirations is actually a rahmah, is a mercy for his nation. In another tradition, we're told that it is through these long desires, through having a hope for the future, that a mother feeds her child, that she nurses her child, that she takes care of her child, because she is hoping for that child to grow and mature and become an adult and marry and have his or her own life. So one of the challenges comes is that how do we reconcile the differences, the apparent conflict amongst these two types of traditions? On the one hand, as the tradition of today from the Commander of the Faithful, he says that the people who have the worst of, or rather those who have the longest of desires, are those who have the worst of actions. But at the same time, as we mentioned, we have traditions that tell us that having desires is a mercy from the nation of Rasulullah, from the nation of the Messenger of Allah. And that a mother has those long desires for her children, for them to grow, and that is why she nurses and takes care of them. How do we reconcile these two apparent contradictions within our religious understanding? One of the answers to this question is that to have desires and goals and aspirations in life which are logical, which are practical, which can be realized within the time span of one's life is not a problem within Islam. So for a mother who is given birth to a child, for her to have the desire for that child to grow and become an adult and marry and have a family, and so she feeds and nurses her child and she takes care of that baby and she brings him or her up in the best possible way, there is nothing wrong with such a mother and her desires. For a person, a young man or a young woman, to want to do good in school and go to university and get a good career and find a good job and settle down, these are all logical, they are practical, they are possible to be realized within the time span of one's life. And so Islam tells us, have such goals, set such lofty goals in your life, and try to aspire to reach to the pinnacles of your own perfection within this world. But what we are prevented, what we are prohibited from, are those goals which are not possible. For somebody to come up and say, I want to be just like the Prophet Muhammad, be infallible, to reach to that level of perfection, to be able to do miracles. People who want to do things which are humanly not possible. Although today with science and technology, it seems that line is becoming more and more blurred. But we know, and I'm sure we can all come up with examples of things which are not humanly possible that people might want to attain. Or for that individual himself or herself, that they are not in the ability to perform that particular thing, to reach to that level. So what we have to appreciate is that having long desires is not a problem, but let them be logical, let them be something which can be attained within the time span of this life. One of the questions which may be asked is, why would the Commander of the Faithful say that those who have the longest of desires also have the worst of actions. One of the reasons may be because when a person entertains such long desires in his or her life, again, which are unattainable, which are not logically possible or that they could never attain, when a person has those, they will do whatever it is that they can to try and attain that goal, whether it be through permissible or impermissible means, whether it be to completely relieve religion and relieve morality and ethics and to just focus on that goal. They will focus all of their effort and energy on attaining that particular goal that they have set, which in some cases, not all, would be something which is not possible to attain and which would take them away from the path of humanity and civilization, and they would actually end up doing things which are not permissible from the human and religious perspective. And so this is one of the understandings why it is such a problem within Islam to have these long goals which are completely unattainable and which are actually illogical in some aspects. And so therefore, in conclusion, when we realize that we are not in a position to attain certain things within life, that certain things are just not within our grasp to attain, let us not try to covet those things. Let us lead a life of balance, of moderation, of working hard, of striving and struggling, but within by setting limits and goals and parameters for actually how much we can attain and what we can attain, and to ultimately leave the rest up to the Creator, but we do our best to set those goals and then we do our best to actually achieve them. Again, but keeping in mind that our goals should never be things which are impossible to attain within the short time span of the life of this world. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, سيف الله ذو الفقار لا فداء سيف الله ذو الفقار لا فداء سيف الله